Hello everyone, welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. We're back at the ADA 60H. For those keeping score, that's about 22.5 gallons. It's ADA's high glass cube aquarium, and it's a centerpiece in my fish room. This is the view from my chair basically. I'm sitting a little bit lower than the chair right now so that I can film in a perfect vantage point for you without reflection. If you can recall, I took out those two angelfish, and after that I did a number of other changes to the scape, primarily the plantings, and I want to talk about all that. I also added a few more nanofish, and now I am experiencing a whole different set of behavior since I took out those two angelfish. The two angelfish weren't necessarily picking on any of these smaller fish, but their mere presence created a more reclusive and fear-driven behavior from these small fish. And they were fine. I didn't lose anything. I had zero problems, and the angelfish were stunning. I have moved those two to my display aquarium a couple weeks ago, and I'm happy to report they're doing excellent. The other angelfish are not upset to see them, and they are not upset to see the other angelfish. They fit into that community, and I will do a video about that fabulous tank in the very near future. But look at this, folks, and let me get in close. Let's start with the red tiger lotus, the centerpiece of the centerpiece aquarium, right? And I did clip a few leaves. You have to do that. It breaks my heart because the leaves were perfectly fine, but I wanted to keep it right about where it is now. It has that beautiful deep red color, which of course is helped by that twin star light, but this is a terrific plant for medium. It can tolerate all different forms of light, but to get this red, you pretty much want it to have at least medium high light. It's doing terrific. I moved into the major foreground. This is interesting. I'm not doing a carpet by any stretch, but I have a kaleidoscope of fun plants moving across in lieu of a carpet. You see Sturgeon repens, the green plant. There's some crypt parva on the far left. That's a crypt balancea one plant, and it anchors the side there and creates this wonderful diorama. These little toppings are Ludwigia Super Red Mini, and I'll talk more about that plant. Those are just little teeny tippy tops, and I placed them right in front there because to me they work like AR plant, the Alterniki Reneki, and I'm saying that wrong, but you know, the AR plant, which I just have terrible luck with. The leaves turn to mush, but I wanted that crimson color to sort of complement the red tiger lotus, and now I've got it. And when they get bigger, I can do any number of things with those plants, and I'll show you where the colony of the adult version of this plant is in this tank, and talk about what I could do with some of the plants, because it has become one of my favorites, and I'll show you why in a moment. I mean, it's perfectly lovely there, but you ain't seen nothing yet. The two aloe vera looking plants to either side of that Ludwigia Super Red Mini are Blixa japonica, which I pulled from my mother colony in another tank, as well as these plantlets right there, and they seem to be doing pretty well. Now that's more shade underneath the lotus than they like, but so far so good. Ideally they would be free and clear of much obstruction. So that's the immediate foreground. If you can see in the midground, by clearing out a whole ton of some of the plants I used to have in here, including an excess of this these common cryptocorns here, it freed up some light and some room for this Bucephalandra to finally come into its own. And you can see it's creating that intense white flower. There might be another one right behind it. And while it's tall, that's what happened when it was trying to break from the crypts and all that Christmas moss. When it was trying to get to the light, it created a tree-like stalk. And I was tempted to cut it, but I'm not going to, because A, it's flowering and it's finally doing really well. You see those super duper white roots there. I'm just curious to see what this bucephalandra will do now that it's got light and it's free and clear of some rival plants that were taking up its valuable real estate. The Christmas moss looks really neat, like a true carpeting moss, if you will, draping down into this foreground here, which has that atypical kaleidoscopic carpet. On the far right, I've got Bacopa, and this is a platinum version. It's basically only showing a bit of white at the top, but it's a nice Bacopa plant. And so this is on the right side, and zooming over back to the left, you see the balance A. So in the back is where I did a ton of changes, as radical to what this fish tank is now as removing those angelfish. First of all, there's the super red, the Ludwigia super red, and this is its submerged form. Beautiful purple and red and pink from top to bottom, so it's not just the tippy tops and a bunch of crap at the bottom, which is a problem I have with stem plants, especially in a taller aquarium. But so far, this one is doing really well, and I've stolen a few tips that were higher than the general line of this plant, and that's what I put down here. That's what I put down here, rather than topping, which is a technique where you keep on stuffing the tops back into the plant colony. There's enough going on there where I didn't want to do that just yet. I trimmed a lot of this anubias and of course the moss. I've talked about that, and removed a whole bunch of cryptocorn, brought it to my LFS, and you know, bye-bye. I still love that plant, but it gets out of hand after a fashion. So this is Ludwigia repens, and I've already had to cut some of those beautiful tops, and I placed one down in the center between the two because it was breaking the water. And while I didn't have a problem with that effect, obviously I love plants above the water, I wasn't sure how the main plant would do once it realized there was carbon dioxide to be had a lot easier up above the water line. Some stem plants I've read and experienced, once they get out of water, that growth starts to take over at the expense of what's in the aquarium. And I want to look at a row of those stems. Right, you can see where I cut one right there, and it's probably going to come back. You can see as two plants, one to the left and right. That's what stems do, which is good and bad. It means you get double your plants, but it looks kind of janky. So I'm still working on how to make that right. In a sense, this Ludwigia repens is too big. I thought I'd gotten a Pallas, you know, another varietal, but it looks like it's just the classic repens, which can, you know, go in huge tanks. But it looks great, and once that one down there comes up, we'll be good to go, because it'll fill out that space. Now back here, this is interesting. It's a combination. I've got two strands of the Bacopa from that you saw previously right there. It's doing really well. I just put them in there because I had them and there was no other place for me at the time. So I put them in when they were an inch tall. You can see what they're doing. This plant here right in the center is Limonphalia hyperoides, and in my other tank it's a lot more red in those strands. Here I'm still waiting for that. Now obviously you need CO2 to get that out of the plant, but I have CO2, I've got a great light, and I think I know what I'm doing, you know, for the most part, but it's still just green, and we'll see. It's not dying by any stretch, but I want it to be more colorful, because when it's in its full glory, it's something to see. Orange, red, pink, all of those colors, and it's got a thick stalk too. This is a plant that could be problematic down at the bottom, but I'm not seeing a lot of dead leaves, and the way I would notice them first is they'd be floating along the top, which you can see is pretty clean. Now there's also some rotala in here. I think this is Rotala rotundifolia. These are plants that I converted from ones that were growing externally, so they were in a completely different form. And I'm going to swivel over, if you forgive this cheesy pan. That's what this is up here. And I wanted to discover just what the hell kind of rotala that was. And so I planted literally those emerged plants. I submerged them a couple weeks ago, and they are converting into the longer, more iconic rotala form that we all know. I'm not enamored with this sort of blasé green. It's got a little bit of variegated red or brown in it, but honestly, it just looks like unhealthy green leaves from a foot away and further. But it's not unhealthy. As you can see, it's a pretty nice cluster. This is a pretty nice cluster. And this is badass. That I want, you know, that's what I'm shooting for. Robust, even growth with a maximum of color. I mean, why the hell else would I be pumping CO2 into this tank if I didn't want to try to get the most from my plants? The Anubias has always done well in here. It had algae problems, but I bought a product from the UK that they don't sell here, and it works really, really well. I think it's called Algae Light. I mean, I can do another cheesy pan and find it. I don't want to stop the video though. But it cleared up a lot of the the blackbeard algae that was starting to form along where the flow was. But bear in mind, I had different plants where all these ones were, and they were fast growing bunchy plants. Pogostem and octopus was one of them. And in the center, in the cluster, after a few months, there would be just a lot of green hair algae and blackbeard algae. I don't have that problem with these plants, knock on wood. And I also used this product from UK. It's funny, overseas they can't use a lot of the medicines. It's hard for them to find, and so they have to use surrogates for some of the medicines that we commonly use to treat our fish. Whereas here we can't buy some of the things that I use to treat the dreaded blackbeard algae, and it seems to have worked, but so has clearing out a ton of plants. Too many plants block flow, block light, and there's where the algae comes in. And that might be more of why I've got such a clean tank right now, even if some of the growth is still figuring itself out. So the livestock, what do we got here? We've got the rummy nose rasboras. There's a beautiful male right there. And we've got the Autosynclus, you see him doing his job. We've got the SB rasbora, or the lamb chop rasbora, doing a terrific job. These guys all used to huddle to the right here when the angelfish were pretty much to the left center. And now they're free swimming every which way, which is really neat to see. I mean, honestly, I feel great for these fish, and I'm so delighted that the angelfish are doing well in their other home. The new resident, and there's an ember tetra, I've got a group of those too. They're stalwarts in any planted aquarium, and they add red, and they're cheap, and they're hardy, and they're just a wonderful little fish. But the new fish is one of the most common staples in the hobby, as prolific and common and age-old in the hobby as the ember tetra. And of course I'm talking about the black phantom tetra. There you see a male on top with the high dorsal, begging the reflection, begging your pardon, and then the female, which will show a slight reddish orange hue and not have the high dorsal. What's cool about these little fish is both sexes, while different, are awesome, and they're really beautiful in their own way. And so getting a group of both sexes, even if you're not trying to breed, is still desirable because they're both beautiful in their own right. The main male, you know, in the hierarchy, which is probably this guy, is gonna be the badass of the group. I mean, look at that dorsal. Look at his proud like hump on the head. Just a gorgeous fish. These are inexpensive, super hardy, tank raised. You can get them even at Petco though, you know, really look at them before you purchase. I got these from my trusted LFS, and you know, I don't always do that, but when I can, and especially when I'm putting them into an established community tank, the last thing I want to do is throw ick into this tank or even something worse. But all that livestock is really doing its own thing now without the two cichlids in there. Got a couple ivory mystery snails, and they're doing all right. I do supplement them with some calcium infused food, otherwise in this acidic, highly planted tank, their shells do start to degrade. It pretty much, mystery snails in planted tanks, I don't know, maybe it should be talked about more, but unless you really try to take some measures, after 4 or 6 months, you'll start to see their shells just degrade, and you can almost see through them, and eventually the animal will perish. So I'm trying to not let that happen, and I'm putting in, I've used Schnello, but basically it's like a zucchini with calcium and other nutrients. You can find it on eBay, Amazon, you know, or at fish swaps. People make it, you could buy it. I did some research and found some on eBay, these little chips, and the snails and shrimp love them. I've got a mono shrimp in here, there's a big one right there. And when the angelfish were in here, you never saw those guys, obviously. There's also a whole ton of Neocaridina in here. I don't see any of them right now, which is surprising because none of these fish are particularly threatening to them. I mean, yeah, a little shrimplet could go in the mouth of any one of these, but there's plenty of them in here. I know because when I clean the canister, I usually find about 10, maybe more, and some of them are brand new, super tiny babies. I save as many as I can, and then I put them back in usually the same tank, you know, at night when none of the other fish can just have at them, so they can scurry away and have another shot at life in this aquarium. So I'm mostly really happy with this. I love the kaleidoscope of colors. I love the lack of algae, and I love the new behavior from all these nanofish that was much more reserved when the two angelfish or the two cichlids were in there. What do you guys think? Let me know. If you remember how it used to be with the plants in the back and the angelfish versus how it is now. I loved the way it was before, but I knew the angelfish needed to move, and sometimes like that game Jenga, you know, you pull one thing and you start a whole avalanche, and that's what I did here. So at a year and a half mark, taking out the two fish, taking out the clumps of fast-growing, primarily green plants in the back, adding some stems with some color from both my tanks and purchased plants, and doing a major trimming. All that is what this video is about, and I hope you found value in it. Okay, everybody, as usual, keep your hands in the tank. You know I do, and ciao for now.